of victory and the agony of defeat.
Great ball around the corner, Penasini. He beats them all. Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Trindle. Sharks coming through. None of them can hold this.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Tip Sheet Podcast. Just make sure my mic levels are right there, sorry. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020, and joining me to break down the last, it's not even regulation week, is it, Craig? It's the last week of NRL and NRLW football, though, with the grand finals concluding on the long weekend just past. It's my good mate, Sixties, also known as Craig. Big fella, glad to have you on board, mate. And as always, a ton of football to talk about some way, somehow. Despite the normal football winding down, we've got a ton on the dock. I'm looking at the list you just put me sent through to me, and it's rep football, it's signings, it's re-signings, it's some big discussion in the wider NRL too. Geez, we've got a lot to talk about, mate.
Yeah, and even in the green room, we started talking about the other things.
Taking on some stuff that we might have missed. Yeah, I know. A lot of football.
And there has been late breaking stuff too. So, yeah, so much to get through, John. Hope you're doing well also, mate, and all the listeners out there. Have we got many in chat tonight?
Yeah, already got Philip, Carl, and Chris in chat. And good evening to everyone that is there, whether they're lurking or taking part in chat. We do appreciate everyone tuning in on this nice and balmy Tuesday evening, as it were, with our first daylight savings live stream.
Yeah, and don't forget, we will, whether it's live or whether we have a pre-recorded podcast, the content's going to keep coming through to you every week. As we said, we might start to veer towards the pre-recorded because we've got some interviews we're going to do, plus we'd also like to get Chris Ricketts involved in some of our podcast content, and we're working with a little bit of a time delay there.
Exactly.
So
not ideal streaming hours.
Yes, but John, as per usual, just no matter what platform people are watching this on, if you can give it a like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that sort of stuff. And that just helps for all the metrics with our content, gets it out there to as many fellow Eels supporters as we can possibly manage. And also a shout out to our sponsors, Star Partners, Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, and of course, Parramatta Leagues Club, the home of the Eels. It's, Star Partners, the OG of our sponsors, and where we've just completed 5 years with Para Leagues partnership with them. And of course, we will have some extra partners coming on into the new year. And we hope to be bringing you the exciting news about that very, very soon. But in the meantime, John, hit that stinger.
News team, assemble!
So, John, last week we had the Sydney Morning Herald breaking the news of what the Kangaroo Tour squad was going to be, and they had Mitch Moses missing out on the squad. And of course, although there was quite a lot of Parramatta supporters that were overjoyed with the fact that Mitch would get a full pre-season, I took the stance as well that it was quite a snub. And I put out some content on our social pages about that. And I was given a bit of a heads up after I'd done that.
Don't trust everything you read. Yeah.
Don't trust everything you read.
When you had Kevin Walters literally on TV saying to Mitchell Moses, I hope your passport's ready, it felt like a bizarre snub. And sure enough, lo and behold, after the grand final, we had the team list announced. And there were a couple of changes to what was presented in that league team list, wasn't there?
Yes, but specifically with regard to Moses, I tried to give people a bit of a heads up on the bumpers up column on grand final day when I said, look, that wasn't an official list. Mitch might still be reading his name when the tour list is put out officially. after the grand final. And yes, lo and behold, that was the way. And now we see that Zach Lomax has pulled out of the Kangaroo Tour with apparently a hip injury. But no problems. If we can't give you one of our wingers, we'll give you the other one, because Josh Addo-Carr has been named to replace Zach Lomax. And I think there probably won't be too many people arguing with the inclusion of Josh Addo-Carr in the Kangaroo Tour, because not only has he had an outstanding season, but he's also the sort of bloke who, as part of a touring party, would be great for the energy and the camaraderie that is needed on a tour. So congratulations to Josh Addo-Carr on that selection and a return to the Australian team.
And I know, I already see in chat people talking about it too. I know Lomax pulling out for hip injuries, fueling speculation that he might be heading off to rugby union. Again, we can only talk about the facts as presented here. And if he's pulled, it's Kevin Walters has reported that he failed to complete the training session with the Kangaroos. So that's what we have on it, guys. And I know that there's a lot of fuel being poured onto the fire here about the status of Rugby League 360 and Zach Lomax and a number of other players. I don't know. Again, if you look at where all the news reports for Rugby League 360 are centralised to, it is entirely Rugby League, Rugby Union or Rugby 360. All the reports coming from Australia. There is nothing else talking about Rugby Union players. So I don't know. It is a real bizarre situation, and I certainly hope that there's nothing more to it for Zach Lomax, but we have to wait and see. A lot of discussion out there, and not much we can do but speculate, and that's not a fun thing to do.
John, whether or not it gets off the ground, it's certainly created a stir in rugby league.
It's so bizarre. It's only rugby league that's talking about it, which is for this mega competition that's essentially the LIV of rugby and rugby league, right? The fact that it's only been localized to Australian player managers right now is so bizarre. So I'm not saying that it's not real, but it is odd.
I think one of the factors with that is that I think R360 has been attempting to go through the front door with the rugby boards around the world and trying to get playing windows for their tournament. To me, it's just exhibition football, because
it's not even
they're not linking to a club. They're not going to be linking to a location. The only locations they're linking to is a venue for the games. They're not required to live. This is according to what's come out so far. They're not required to live in the country where they're going to be playing. They can basically fly in, fly out, as it were. The matches are being described as events. I would be stunned if they ended up with quarter or half full stadiums.
It is a very, very bizarre situation. Obviously, we have to wait and see what plays out here. If there is the sort of money backing it that's been rumoured, then it'll probably just go up and do its thing unsuccessfully. But I don't know. It's a very, very odd situation. And
it's lottery wins for any
players.
Look,
if Zach Lomax and Payne Haas and the other high tier players that have been linked to R360 get the sort of money that's been purported, then good luck to them. Honestly, that is so much money.
Oh, look, it's one of the interesting things will be to see which players go across, and secondly, how long rugby holds their interest. Because I remember with Sam Burgess, and when he went to rugby union, he was basically bored out of his mind, because he went from being a back rower to being a centre in union. And as he said, he'd be lucky to make 3 tackles in a game and would barely have any touches of the ball.
Yeah.
And I remember him talking in an interview once, and he said he'd get all these people patting him on the back and saying,
for a great game.
Just played.
He had half a dozen involvements in the game. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's compared to league where even as a winger you are heavily involved in every set, offensively and defensively. Yeah, again, money talks, and that's going to be a big factor here if the dollars are backing up what's been rumoured. But yeah, again, it's only been spoken about in Australia in rugby league circles right now. So just a very, very odd situation, and not to say that it's not real, it's not real, but we have to wait and see, I guess, and wait for something more concrete to come out. Lomax spoke at the Dally M's and gave a very measured response, saying, he's contracted the Parramatta and very happy with the Eels, which you'd expect him to say, right, Craig? Like, you can't read too much into that either way. You'd expect him to say something like that. And all we can do now is wait for some clarity. I know Riles made a comment that there had been discussions in the weeks prior about a potential move, and that the club would be open, assuming that the right things happen on the club's end. So we have to wait and see.
Yeah. Obviously, it's something that wouldn't go to the next step unless the R360 was getting off the ground, and maybe that's something that the club and Lomax have to work on, because the club would no doubt want a commitment from Lomax as soon as possible. And if he's going to be involved in 360, whether it be in a couple of like at the start of the season, or whether it be like through maybe other rugby union deals, or whether it be not until October, the Eels don't want to sit on it for that long, because they've got to replace him in the roster. So now what I said in my bumpers up column was in response to Lomax being linked with Pezzett, and that the likelihood of Pezzett coming across being dependent upon Lomax. I don't know that the two are terribly related, other than that the same player agent has been talking about it in his role as a media commentator. Obviously, I'm talking about Braithen Astor.
And look, I don't think it's a coincidence too that rumours about Cameron Munster's interest from the other party in rugby union has now emerged as a mechanism to maybe keep Pezzett in Melbourne too, or keep that in play as an option.
You can literally see all the parts of that mechanism going into gear now. It's almost predictable, John. With regard to Pezzett, he's got this clause about Jerome Hughes and whether he's extended and whether he's actually a free agent. Look, the thing that we know about the Storm is players don't want to leave the Storm when they're in the system, and that's why you end up with a talented player like Pezzett, and albeit that he's had some injuries over the last few years, but it's why you have talented players like him, and before him, Harry Grant, being behind and waiting their time when they could have been playing first grade. Now, Harry Grant had that experience where he was loaned to the Tigers, and I think Melbourne are ideally looking for a club to loan Pezzett to. A loan's not something that the Eels would be interested in.
The only time a loan would ever benefit you, and I mean this is the best angle I can find, is that if you are one piece away and you haven't got the long-term cap space to make a signing, and you think that one player on loan can make you go over the edge, and at that point you might as well find a way to commit to that player long-term anyway, and say salary cap be damned, as we've seen in the past. A loan only benefits the actual loaning party long-term.
Yeah. So look, if Parramatta are able to manage to secure young Pezzett on just a regular deal, not a loan deal, but a standard deal, I'd say you go for it. But I also say if Lomax goes, we've got to sign an outside back. And that's with respect to the young players coming through. We don't have someone apart from Bailey Simonson, who looks like he's repaired some of the bridges at the club and will start the pre-season with the Eels. But outside of Bailey, there's not really what you call a huge amount of NRL experienced outside backs below the first grade team. Like, apart from Tungor, who's had a little bit of experience, but that was only a little bit last year. There's not a great deal there. So I think the Eels would have to go into the marketplace for an outside back for certain if Lomax moves on.
I see. Rugby League History's in chat, Craig, and he was having a bit of fun with Melbourne losing the grand final. Was it James Graham or was it Gordon Tallis that gave you a shout out this week, mate? I'm fairly certain I heard one of them give you a shout out saying they were watching your podcast in regards to some recent history. So you got a good audience going there if that's the case, mate.
Look, Rugby League Histories, he's been putting together his product nicely now for a few years.
I'm almost certain it was one of those two in some sort of grand final discussion was talking about sort of the history and pageantry of something, and they mentioned you. So cool little shout. I also think in the past, Bonnie's given a bit of a shout out too on one of the social media posts on Rugby League History. It was one of the older ones, I think, from memory. One of the older New South Wales Rugby League posts. It might have been Jammer on Triple M when I was going to buy some stuff for dinner on the grand final. So maybe I'm pretty certain it was him. So I haven't got the podcast up, but I'll have to have a look and see if I can find it.
Yeah. Moving on, John. In the vein of the representative honours coming Eels players' way, we've got Jack Williams in the men's team for the Prime Minister's 13. And we've also got Abby Church and Chloe Jackson in the women's team for the PM's 13 against PNG.
Yeah, I put the full honour roll up as a Team List Tuesday post today. We've got a few Eels being ripped. So
yep. And you might want to double check what I'm rattling off now, John.
Okay.
So Elsie Albert, Fleur Gin as well for PNG, and incoming Jack DeBellin being named. And then in the Samoan team, we've got Junior Polo.
Correct, our sole representative for Tyler Samoa, yeah.
Yep, and in the women's team, Lindsay Tui and Rivali Arlo.
Correct.
Tonga, Isaiah Yongi and Will Penasini. And in the women, Martha Mattaelli.
For Tonga, correct.
Yep, for Fiji and the men, Kitione Katonga.
Yep.
And the women, it's a World Cup squad that was named for them. I think they're
not taking part in the Pacific Championships. No, they're
yeah. So and Rory Muller was, I think, named in their extended World Cup squad.
The only other notable player we missed is another incoming Eel in Keilee Joseph, who is in the Jillaroo squad. So
yes, and we mentioned, and we should mention the outgoing Dylan Brown as well. Correct, because he in the listing he's as an Eels.
Well, he's still contracted as an Eel to end of October, right? So
that's right.
Certainly going to be a legacy Eel for a long, long time.
Now there is the signing news, which we'll get onto, and it's in the women's program. So Bree Eels and Lindsay Tui have both been extended. I think Eels till the end of next year and Tui till the end of 27. And you mentioned there before incoming Keilee Joseph, who we'd heard those whispers floating around a number of weeks ago that there was a quality middle that the Eels were looking to add to their roster for 2026, and as it turns out, it's Keilee Joseph. So that's a big pickup, John. And we were complaining before about the Broncos and how they were able to pick up Jesse Southwell and just continue on their way of building stronger and stronger rosters. But they have now lost Keilee Joseph. They've also lost Gail Broughton and
Mele
Hufanga to the Warriors.
They're actually hemorrhaging elite players here, and yes, they signed Southwell. It's a big boost to them, but Broughton was a reigning Dally M 5A of the year, and Hufanga is obviously a beast in the centres, and Keilee Joseph is a young star that's won multiple premierships across the Roosters and the Broncos. So they're getting picked apart. The salary cap mechanisms are working for them in a negative way, like the way when you have success, the way it's meant to work, but not so much for the Roosters.
I'll wait till they name their final roster for their final team for next year.
Until you pass judgment whether they've actually been weakened or not.
Yeah. Because I mean, straight away lose Broughton, but bring in the New South Wales incumbent Origin half, who is given her age, she's going to be a phenom.
Yeah, exactly. One of the most valuable pound for pound players in the competition.
Yeah.
For Parramatta, Keilee Joseph, obviously a star middle forward, plays lock forward for us. Prop. What do you foresee the sort of ripple effects for our pack? Does Kennedy move into the front row? Obviously, Elsie Albert's going to be a starting bookend. How do you sort of manipulate that starting pack right now if you had to project it?
Yeah, look, it's hard to see because you want that lock to play that link role rather than that straight middle that you get with the props. I guess that's where the coach has to make that judgment call about which player he thinks is going to be best suited to that 13 when you've got two established 13s there competing. Well, I guess the benefit is that our middle just gets that little bit stronger. And Brianna Eels did a great job, I thought, this year, John. And we've got such powerful and promising young props, young middles coming through in Riverlea and I've got a mental block, John. She's one of our favourites.
Tess McWilliams?
Tess. Why have I got a mental block on Tess?
Don't worry, I'm there all the time with mental blocks.
The days are too long for me at the moment,
and
mate.
It's daylight savings, it makes it that much worse.
So Tess had the most outstanding season. This is why it's ridiculous that I just had that mental block on a name for a moment there. Teenager. And when you've got not just Kennedy Cherrington there, but Ruben, who's also able to play that utility role where she can play at lock as well if she's rested from the dummy half, if they want to keep her on the field. I guess now they don't have to look at keeping her on the field. So
no.
There's probably spots in the team other than the pack now where the Eels will look at adding a bit of depth to the roster now. So, and I guess considering that they had some nasty injuries this year, it's to Cassie and to Rory. It's maybe there was. I don't know, John. I mean, it was a strange sort of season for the Eels, wasn't it?
It was incredibly disrupted. If it wasn't those two major injuries, we also had a stack of injuries to middle forwards in general. It was very disrupted. Had the less than ideal midpoint through the campaign with those major injuries. And look, even considering that, and also factoring in the huge acquisition of Keilee Joseph, how much do we provisionally narrow the gap to the Roosters and the Broncos? Joseph isn't enough. What more do you need?
I guess you need. Abby Church is arguably the game breaker that's in the squad, in the spine at the moment. If you're looking to match up, because for mine, there's two things you have to match up with those particular teams. Number one is the strength and, well, there's three things. The strength and mobility in the forwards, we're probably not too far off. It was maybe just experience that we're down a little bit with the young players that are coming through. Then you look at having a spine who can make players around them look better. And I think we had last year a little bit of fluctuating form from Rachel Pearson. So she had some really good games, but then she had some ordinary games in that run of really bad form from the team. She suffered during that time as well. And as a consequence, I think it impacted what Abby Church was able to do at fullback. Now, Abby was on fire in the last few games of the season. And it wasn't that there was anything wrong with her effort and what she was trying to do. It was almost like all the timing, the synchronicity of the team was out of fraction. And I felt that it really impacted Abby's involvement in the team. Because we saw in those last few games, as I said, just when everything seemed to be clicking a bit better inside her, with the players inside her, that she was then unlocked a lot better. So yeah, John, look, arguably, someone in the halves. If you could. If you could steal someone like Taryn Aiken off the Roosters,
I mean,
that'd be a game changer.
That's a thinking big.
If you could steal a Tamika Upton off the Broncos. So when you say how far are we off those two teams, I would immediately nominate the absolute stars in those two players as being just. They're just that much better than every other female player. It's not that there's any dearth of talent elsewhere, but those two are just, I think, on another level. And to use as an example other players, let's go for the player that got the best on field in the grand final in Mele Hufanga. All right, now she absolutely rampaged through the Roosters with her carries and had something like 17 tackle breaks, I think, that was a stat I read straight after the game. Because as soon as the game was over, I went straight to the player stats because I thought she's got to be over 20 tackle breaks, easy. There were 2 or 3 carries where she was beating 5 or 6 in just those tackle breaks alone.
Did she score that try?
Maybe.
Because, look, if you're talking about balancing the calls, I don't think the Roosters scored that try before that, though. There was a knock-on and an obstruction in the lead-up to the try that was scored by their back rower. But, geez, there was a couple of ordinary calls in that grand final.
Yeah. Let's not go into the referees.
Hufanga is a beast, yeah. And a real point
what
of
I was going to say is, you can balance that with Hufanga, where she's mortal, is that an opposite centre, an opposing centre,
can get the better of her for agility and speed.
Will get around her. Yeah. So that's where she's mortal in that regard. Now, whether her future lies in the back row might be a completely different matter. But yeah, to answer your question, how far off are the Eels? We're an elite strike, best in the competition player away from those teams, because that's who they've got. So, John, I think that just about takes us through the Eels news, and we're ready to hit the. Unless there's something.
I'm just trying to see, did I miss anything on my notes here? We mentioned Bree Eels and Lindsay Tui, didn't we?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
And we did the rep honor roll. Yeah, I think that pretty much brings an end to all the Parramatta stuff, because I was talking in chat here that there's also the Australian schoolboys and schoolgirls that will also be playing as part of our Prime Minister's sequence of games. But the Eels, believe it or not, have no schoolgirl representatives, despite taking out the Lisa Fiola. No Eels I could spy in that team list. We do have 2 current Eels and 1 future Eel in the boys team as well, though. Cameron Bambutt at fullback, Chris Petrus in the back row, I think off the bench, and then Jackson Coyner, who we signed from the Broncos, starting front row there. So definitely something to watch there. I think there's a live stream for this game, right, Craig, or these games. Historically, I think there's been NRL.com live streams. If not, we'll let you know where to best watch it when those games come up. Peter, we mentioned the club championship last week. Eels took home the club championship for being the most successful organisation, from top to bottom this year. So, we was it the Flower Meadow?
The Flowers Memorial Pennant.
Yeah, Flowers Memorial Pennant, there you go, is what they've now dubbed it. So very nice indicator of overall success that can hopefully translate into NRL and NRLW long-term success.
I'm sure that pennant, it's probably around somewhere, was a large pennant-type flag that the Eels used to fly at Cumberland Oval when they were winning titles. So I just have it in my head seeing that actually on a flagpole. It might be my aging brain making stuff up now, but I just have it in my head that I've seen that pennant in real life. Now, maybe it wasn't on a flagpole, maybe it was on display in a cabinet or something, but I have seen the Flowers Memorial pennant 50 years ago or whenever it was. So, John,
yeah, well,
let's head to the NRL news and any musical interlude.
Yeah, I did manage to scrape together a musical interlude. Not my finest work, but you know what? This season just keeps going on and on and on. It's not even a Rugby League World Cup. It's not a 4-year cycle event. It's just a long season with a Ashes tour and a massive Pacific Championship that's coming up as well. And in the vein of a season that just does not end, I bring you a bit of a classic here for those that used to watch. Was it Sherry? Let me make sure I get this right. It was from the old puppet Lamb. What was it? God, if I can actually type on my keyboard. It was Shari Lewis and the Lamb Chop.
Lamb Chop, my goodness.
Lamb Chop, yeah.
But you're going right back to the 60s with that.
I'm going all the way back here. And this is one of those ones, is it the Mandela effect when you misremember something?
Yeah.
It's often quoted as a song that never ends, but it's the song
This is the song that
doesn't end. And it just keeps on going. Yes, this is the season that doesn't end. It just keeps going.
On, my friend. Some people started singing it, not knowing what it was, and they'll continue singing it forever just because this is the song that doesn't.
Bit of an old earworm here.
Oh, I was about to say, how many people are going to be lodging a complaint for an earworm now?
Start whistling this tune for the week. Season that doesn't end, eh?
How do I turn you off?
Yeah, so the season that doesn't end. Now we've still got plenty of international football to carve through now in the next few weeks, including that big Ashes tour and the massive Pacific Nations or Pacific Championships with some very good teams for Samoa and Tonga in particular, but also Fiji. And once we get the Cook Islands team, which haven't been announced, be interested to see who they can put together.
So, John, before we get into the grand final review and our discussion topic about Reece Walsh versus Nathan Cleary and Reece Walsh versus Jared Hayne, just quickly on that signing news, I think we spoke about that it looked like RCG was leaving the Titans. That's only just been confirmed.
Yeah, today.
It looks like he's off to the London Broncos.
Yeah, on the back of Darren Lockyer taking a controlling stake in the London franchise. His first major move here is to recruit RCG to help bring them back into being a frontline contender. They are in the top Tier 1 Super League, right now?
I think they haven't officially
I know Rugby League history
named the teams in the expanded competition as yet.
Yeah. So RLH might be able to give us some clarity on that. But if they're not, he'll be the player that bring them back into contention, chasing that promotion. If they are, he's going to be the player that's going to try and make him be the frontline competitor for him. Obviously, a big move for them. Ends a very unhappy stint, 1 year stint at the Gold Coast Titans for Reg. He didn't really fit in there, did he? At no point did he look happy in his trappings there. Obviously, was a phenomenal player for the Parramatta Eels up until the very end and went out as a reigning Ken Fournette medalist. But he now moves on to the Super League. Div 2 from Chris. Okay, there you go. So he's going to be heading their bid to get back into the top competition. Yeah.
And look, I guess when you've got a competition where it's promotion and relegation, players do take a punt a little bit on linking with a lower division club that's got their setting their goal for promotion up to the top tier.
I wonder how we talk about transfer fees and whatnot. How do like cap payments across competitions work for the Super League and the NRL? Like the Titans going to be fronting some of his wages for London. Be one of those parts of the salary cap that there's not a lot of clarity on. Be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. Look, John, from memory, we were talking about this in relation to Bailey Simonson when it looked like he was going to leave, and that he'd asked the Eels, reportedly, he'd asked the Eels for a release. And we said, well, if a player's asking for a release, is the club then obligated to keep paying them? Like if they say, you want out, you can go. Because if the player's saying they want out, is there an obligation of the club to pay them if they're granting them?
Yeah, if the player doesn't want to commit their contractual obligations of a club, then what obligations does the club have to pay out any of the remaining contracts should they depart? So yeah, it's
John, out there in the marketplace, right? If you had a 2-year contract, let's say you were contracting whether you were an engineer or an architect, a computer programmer, but if in your role you'd contracted yourself out to an organisation, let's say you took up a 2-year contract, if at the end of that first year you said, you know what, I really don't want to be here next year, I'm going to take my leave and go, I would think that not only would the employer not have to pay you, there might even be circumstances where if you didn't meet the goals of your contract, whether you would in fact be liable to repay any of the contract money that you'd received. So I would find it strange that if the departure of RCG was on his accord, whether they would have to pay him. But I also suspect that the Titans themselves were pretty keen to lighten their salary cap loading with RCG.
Yeah.
And get him off the books.
And they've free. I mean, I don't know how much cap space they're freeing up, but with RCG gone, Khan Pereira linked to the Warriors, I believe it was, and Philip Sami also being shopped around. I don't know what sort of cap problems they had as over the cap mark there, but they've opened up some space. You'd have to think.
Wouldn't you have liked if we were in trouble with retaining Zach Lomax? Wouldn't you have liked the Eels to pursue someone like Khan Pereira? That you imagine you have the Fox on one wing and Khan Pereira on the other. I
mean, you're buying in knowing that there'd be some defensive deficiencies he's got to work on, but he's got the raw pace that you could certainly do a fair bit of work with. I'm also not against Philip Sami, by the way, a player who has had plenty of good games against the Parramatta Eels and can play wing and centre pretty comfortably. I certainly wouldn't be opposed to us adding another experienced outside back option in the vein of Sami, or I was having a chat with our mate Hamish. Tommy Talau's another one that came to mind as just a solid, experienced option that can maybe not be a frontline contender, but be a really good backup option for you. We could use one more, regardless of the Zach Lomax situation, and obviously doubly so if Zach Lomax does end up leaving the Eels. Obviously, Bailey Simonson would then step into that vacancy, but then you need to find probably two more, not seasoned, but at least NRL experienced options to have in the mix, because while we do have big raps on guys like Richard Penasini and Araz Nanva, you want a bit of NRL experience among your backup options.
Yeah. Okay, John, let's get into your takes on the grand finals.
Yeah, so...
first of all, we just mentioned the state championship went exactly as everyone would have thought. The Warriors just on a different level to the Queensland Cup premiers. And that was expected because that Warriors team was also on a different level to everyone else they were playing in the New South Wales Cup. Yes, there was the odd loss, but by the time that they were naming their team for the finals football, they had a whole lot of players there that had made appearances in the Warriors first grade in the back half of the season, and just managed to qualify to play in the New South Wales Cup.
Yeah, they scraped in on eligibility. And maybe even got some allowances here and there, maybe But look, it's one of the most talented cup teams to maybe be fielded in the history of the competition. It is a great blend of really good NRL or NRL adjacent players and fantastic young talents in there, like guys that you're going to see in the NRL or featuring NRL, like Kalani Going and Eremia Toeva. What was the other one that really jumped out to me? We saw Stowers Smith play NRL this year. So they've got a Setu 2 as well, was very good for them. So they're a very talented team. And Birdie's boys put up a good fight relative to the talent levels, but the 50-20 scoreline, and that was with the Warriors really taking the foot off the throat in the last 13, 14 minutes.
They remind me of some of the Parramatta reserve grade teams of the late 70s, early 80s that were stacked with young talent coming through, and a few older players there that had been first grade stars in the mid 70s. And they were phenomenal to go and watch. And that Warriors team very much reminded me of those days of watching Parramatta's lower grades. And then in the women's match, John, probably a little bit closer than I thought it was going to be. And it required, look, I thought Brisbane took the foot off the pedal a little bit and allowed the Roosters to come back into it. A few mistakes that they probably shouldn't have made. But when all was said and done, like there was so many more missed tackles from the Roosters, and a lot of those, of course, coming on one player in particular who got the best on field. But it was a lot more competitive than I thought, because I honestly thought the Broncos would run away and win by some margin. And that, although they won, it didn't happen the way it did unfold.
Yeah. Obviously, if the Roosters had been full strength, you'd talk about a different equation here between the two top teams, but they weren't. And the best player on the field in terms of like overall form was Tamika Upton, and she had a big influence in this game.
Yeah.
A game that features some spotty officiating that contributed to both teams scoring. So it's not like one side can say, oh my God, we were robbed. Both teams had pretty contentious tries, as we joked about earlier in the podcast. But yeah, probably like you said, closer than we anticipated maybe, but a reflection of where we thought the two teams were in both form and particularly injuries and availability. And yeah, that I know it's a shortened competition, so it's not as big a burden, but that honestly, it is such a mental roadblock to come into a game like this undefeated. It weighs on teams consistently. Like whether it was Tom Brady's Patriots back in 2007, I think it was, who was chasing the perfect season, or here in the NRLW, the Roosters chasing a perfect season. It gets you at the end. It really does. And the Broncos came into this one just a bit hungrier, and that's what the result saw. 4 tries to 3, and some good goal kicking in this game too. Jocelyn Kelleher, none of her conversions were for overs, and she kept the Roosters in it with a couple of peachy sideline conversions.
Yeah, when you were asking about what's the difference in between the Eels and some of the other teams, what I should have thrown in there as well was that ability to get your conversions or penalties from a wide angle. Now, Rachel Pearson's had times where she's nailed
had it on a string,
really,
but not consistently.
Yeah. And she's got a very unusual kicking action. She's almost approaching it front on like a toe poker. And then at the last minute, she's sort of kicking it with the inside of the foot, but it's, it almost looks like a toe poke in her approach and her action. So I don't think that she gets the best purchase on the ball. So that a conversion from the sideline inside the 20s about the limit of how far Rachel can strike the ball. These girls, they're not far off some of the men converting from the sideline when you see how well they strike the ball. So, but anyway, John, we'll move on to the NRL Grand Final.
Yeah, I don't know
how
I don't know how your NRL Grand Final went, but I had a crazy gunman around the corner from me.
I think I heard something
Yeah, we
about
had
that on the news.
Yeah, just about a K down the road from me, there was a crazy old man taking shots of rifle people on the street. So we got the police alert during the game saying, "Don't leave your home. There's a blockade across these streets here." But yeah, didn't hear the gunshots, but I saw the footage today. There was some poor soul that was walking past a bus stop, and the glass shatters behind him, and he's just like, "What's going on?" He just kept walking. Didn't realize the crazed man was shooting at him. But that was Croydon Park for you on the grand final night.
No, it was pretty quiet here, John. Just stayed at home, watched the game. I think it was everything that it promised to be. And as like I said in my column, I really didn't care who won, and I didn't. So I just planned on being able to enjoy whatever was produced on the day, and it delivered. The game delivered, no doubt.
It was the weakest defensive grand final in a long time, but very entertaining with the ball in hand. Couple of controversial moments in terms of the officiating. Should Reece Walsh have been put in the bin? Yeah, Peter, I saw that. The gunman has been spotting pictures, no joke, in a Bulldogs jersey. But I do want to throw in there, the closest sporting club was an AFL club. So we've got a Canterbury fan that could be suspected of being an AFL supervisor too. So, that's what's going on there. But, yeah.
John, I don't know about you, but to me, the turning point was so tangible, which was that failed grounding by Tui Kamika.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, points are always at a premium in these games, aren't they? And you can't throw away a gift. It was a 6-pointer, wasn't it? Because that was near the posts. You can't be doing that. Obviously, Reece Walsh made a good play at the ball to help loosen it, but Tui should have scored that. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And like I said, there were some controversial moments. The Reece Walsh contact to Xavier Coates, should he have been binned? I contend that if that was a normal game, he gets put in the bin. But in the grand final, because the referees made a point that you don't get any allowance for a player falling down this year. That's been a regular point. It's the burden still falls on the defender to not make high contact, and Walsh got away with a big one there. Mind you, we also
John, why are the commentators now and I'm sure it's even the referees in their discussions on the field, they talk about the extenuating circumstances of the player was fallen.
For the longest time, it was just extenuating circumstances didn't make a difference. You either make high contact or you don't. And this is something that we'd argue that at times you have players like James Tedesco who have made it a nightmare for defenders to provide a legal hit because of the ducking and the weaving. And in this case, Coates did fall down. Don't get me wrong. Coates actually fell down a fair bit here. And if they're being consistent with the extenuating circumstances, I could cop Walsh getting away with it. But based on everything we've seen this year, that was a sin bin. But because
he turned side on, led with his shoulder.
Led with the shoulder, direct contact, direct forceful contact, as they like to say. Easy bin. Mind you, last time he got binned in the finals, he came back out and played an absolute blinder, so maybe that wouldn't have stopped him anyway. But big moment
maybe,
that one. Big moment that one.
But it wasn't long. It's then arguable. Are there a couple of plays that he doesn't get to make?
Yeah, exactly. In that window, exactly.
Look, to me, I haven't seen a performance like that, and we'll talk about that in a moment in trying to compare players, individual player performances.
All-time Clive Churchill performance right there for sure. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of there, but
and we messaged at the end, and that was a conclusion that we both came to. It's like, well, this is the easiest Clive Churchill decision.
He wasn't Robinson Crusoe there too. A number of Broncos having great games. Staggs continuing his rich run of form. Shibasaki outstanding. Dean Mariner fantastic. That entire backline really contributing there. Both teams were banged up in this one though. We saw Jack Howarth succumb to an early injury. Likewise, both Ben Hunt and Adam Reynolds. Poor Ben Hunt will never forget the grand final he choked. Probably won't remember the grand final that he won because of the concussion. Chris Payne-Haas outstanding as well. Agreed. Paddy Carrigan coming back from that suspension, good. Kobe Hetherington, very good. Young Xavier Wilson, outstanding off the bench. I thought that when Payne Haas came off, Xavier came in there and was an absolute monster.
Was that his best game you've seen, John?
Look, he's had some
career?
fantastic games in the last couple of years, but given the context of the game, to step up and deliver 150 metres off the bench, and have a good tackle count, 14 tackles, just one missed. Yeah, I think that,
in the grand final. In a grand final.
Yeah, in a grand final, exactly. It'd be hard to go past that as his best performance in a young career. On the Storm side, I don't know what to make of Ryan Pappenhausen's game, Craig, because he played very well. Couple of bad defensive reads, but I was shocked at how much pace he's lost. I couldn't. Reece Walsh is not slow, but he shouldn't have mowed down Ryan Pappenhausen the way he did off that key.
No.
Both the key scrum play and then at the final moments of the game when Elisai Katoa made that break, he positioned himself poorly and allowed Reece Walsh to flip off Katoa and cut him down. Yeah,
and that one where he had Reece Walsh was running him down very quickly. It looked like he was running in sand, didn't it?
Yeah, and he panicked. He flung that ball back, which led to an error from Will Warbrick, wasn't it? In that
yes.
circumstance, and just a couple of key moments there for the Storm that in a 4-point loss, geez, they add up so quickly. I will say that I thought the Melbourne spine was pretty ordinary. I know Jerome Hughes had a couple of nice touches early on, but I was watching his passing mechanics, Craig, and he was not anywhere near fine. He was really struggling to push that ball out wide. I thought Cam Munster he had, like, the numbers say he had a lot of runs, but didn't have much impact. Harry Grant was quiet, and Pappenhausen, as we mentioned, had both good and bad in his game there. I don't know. There's been a lot of discussion about the Melbourne system right now in the wake of this grand final loss. The first team to lose back-to-back grand finals in, 30 years? 30-plus years. Are they a team that is now outstanding at positioning themselves for regular season success, but maybe lacking that final oomph? That, maybe it's not X factor, but just the way they're configured, they can get to a grand final, but can they win it? And they didn't lose by much, just like they didn't lose by much to Penrith, but that's been the dominant conversation now.
Yeah, I think maybe that's overplaying it a little bit, and the reason that I say that is that those players that you mentioned there, look, maybe it is a case when it comes to Pappenhausen that he's lost some of the pace. We know that Jerome Hughes is a quality player. We know what Munster can deliver in big games.
I think Munster's been trending down for a while. To be brutally honest.
Really?
I think that he didn't have his best form this year.
You could say that the Melbourne Storm never reached great heights during this season, but in never reaching great heights, they still
made a grand final.
Final.
We spoke to Bernie about this.
Arguably, if not for some, you'd have to call them catastrophic errors, because Tui Kamika not being able to get that ball down.
Yeah,
it's like centimetres off the ground.
And there's a couple of Pappenhausen moments there. I know they add up incredibly.
Go down the other end of the field and score.
It's a
massive points turnaround in a match where they only lose by 4 points. Then you also have Warbrick, who has the ball stolen off him. Now, arguably, that was a knock-on as well in the steal, because he's had the ball ripped out of his hands. Now, there's plenty of times when a referee will call that as a knock-on by the player who stealed the ball.
In the possession, exactly.
Because if the ball's gone backwards, it's gone backwards off Warbrick. It's gone forwards off Ezra Mam. That's the direction of the steal. So so anyway, that's a tough couple of years for the Storm in terms of those results. But man, I'd much rather be making the grand final on a regular basis than being an also-ran that doesn't qualify for finals football. While ever they have got certain players in their team and they're making finals football, they're always going to be a chance, because you don't know the toll that injury might take on other teams or a sudden loss of form. And let's face it, if Reece Walsh doesn't play in that team, despite the number of good performers in that Broncos team, if Reece Walsh doesn't play, I'd suggest to you the Storm win by 12 to 18 points.
Yeah, probably. Walsh was that big a deal. Hang on, I'm just doing this. You know, God, how far have I put this? That. Really? Since the start of June, if I'm doing this right, let me just double check this. Since the start of June, only 2 teams have beaten the Brisbane Broncos.
Well, we know who one of them is.
Yeah. It was the Parramatta Eels and the Melbourne Storm. So there you go. All the way back to June, and the loss before that was they lost to Manly of all teams. Since then, they beat the Titans, had a bye, Sharks, Warriors, Dogs, Titans again. We beat them, smashed the Rabbitohs. They got beaten by the Storm 22-2. What happened in that game? Were they undermanned? No, they weren't undermanned. Then they smashed the Knights, beat the Cowboys, beat the Storm, beat the Raiders, beat the Panthers, and then beat the Storm. There you go. So, a little feather in our cap there.
Oh, absolutely, because they were coming home against us. They just didn't quite get that timing, that last try.
Yeah.
So, John, let's go to this discussion topic. First of all, the grand final performance from Reece Walsh this year versus the grand final performance of Nathan Cleary in 23, when he dragged them back from a seemingly impossible position against the Broncos to get victory. My take on that is he performed for 20 minutes in that game. It was phenomenal. It was a phenomenal 20 minutes. But prior to that, I actually thought he'd been quite ordinary in that game.
I agree. I think that, obviously, narratively speaking, if you're talking about a game as a movie, that's the classic Mighty Ducks comeback in the final quarter, heroic moment. And it's great for the Hollywood sort of angle of it. But, yeah, he played ordinary football for 60 minutes and just turned it on for 20, and the Broncos wilted. Whereas in this one, we saw Reece Walsh outstanding from the first minute through to the 80th.
Yeah, and on both sides of the game, attack and defence.
Yeah, big moments, saving tries, right up until that last set where Katoa makes that bust down Melbourne's right edge, and he does the classic, the thing that you see both he and Callum Ponga do a lot of, ripping off the lead runner to try and snipe the support player. He got away with it. Katoa, I mean, Pappenhausen was positioned too close to Katoa, but Katoa, tried the unselfish thing and pass, and Walsh read him. So huge moments there. The try score where he switches behind the ruck from 35, 40 metres out and then just knifes through that Melbourne ruck and just carries Pappenhausen for the final 5 metres to score. I mean, great. One of the great individual grand final tries. He was outstanding. The only thing we didn't see from him was a 40-20, right? That's the only part of his kit bag that we didn't really see. And beyond that, he was just so good.
Yeah, so are we saying that's a non-event, that comparison? It's
look,
Walsh.
I know Penrith fans will cling. Well, Penrith fans will definitely cling to Cleary's big moments there and say, no, he won the game by himself, and he certainly did more contextually in that window, I guess. But Walsh up against a very good Melbourne team, and given the injuries in that game too, he lost both his halves there. I know Ezra Mann was there on the bench, but he lost both Ben Hunt and Adam Reynolds. And he just, if anything, he just stepped up even more, which in those big moments, you can't get players to do much more than that.
Yeah, just ultra focused for 80 minutes.
Took the Ritalin, didn't he? Took the Adderall before the game. He was dialed in. And look, that is Reece Walsh, though, isn't it? Like he is rocks every now and then, but when he is diamonds, he is just the full, 24-carat diamond. He just goes crazy for 80 minutes. He has every tool in his kit bag you'd need from a fullback or a halfback. He can kick a 40-20. He can create a break out of nothing if he's change of pace. He's deceptively strong for his relative, because he's not a big bloke. He's like my height, I think. He's like 5'10", 177 or something like that. He's not a big boy, but he is electric. he's barely got me covered for pace, I'll tell you that. But he can pass, he can kick, break tackles, make defensive plays. The only thing that's we talked about this with the Eels SG board, but the only thing that's going to stop Reece Walsh is Reece Walsh. The Eels Jersey Flegger was earlier this year, making that joke. The only thing that will stop Reece Walsh is just Reece Walsh as a footballer off the field. And
how old is he now? 22, 23?
He can't be much older than that because him and the Hammer were both in the same Australian team. Yeah, turned 23 this year in July. So literally has the entire rugby league world ahead of him if he wants it.
So let's get into the debate that Eels supporters would love to weigh in on, I'm sure. And if anyone in our chat wants to weigh in on this, let's compare the back half of the season of Reece Walsh to the back half of the season of Jared Hayne in 2009. Who did it better? Look,
I like how every time a player does this, whether it's Ben Barber or Reece Walsh here or any other player, Jared Hayne's always the litmus test. Like, he is the standard for this kind of thing. And I mean, it's fair, isn't it? Hayne 09, ragtag bunch of Eels. And I think that's probably often the tiebreaker for mine is you look at that Parramatta team, you go back to the 09 squad, and I know that Footy was playing some otherworldly football in the front row. Let me just go pull up the squad. But we had
look at our halves.
It was a ragtag bunch of battlers, wasn't it? I mean, Birdie was great in the wing. We got Inu, Joel Reddy, Eric Grove. So the back line wasn't too bad. But Dan Mortimer and Jeff Robson is probably one of the weakest grand final halves pairings you'll ever see. And
with respect to both players, it's no. And given that Daniel Mortimer did win a premiership with the Roosters not long after, but
2015,
let's face it, he established his career as a bench utility.
Yeah,
Daniel Mortimer, not a front line.
You had Kayla on the twilight years of his career. You had Matt Keating, again, a guy that worked really hard but wasn't an outstanding dummy half. He was up against Cameron Smith. Philly was great. Heine in the twilight of his career. Ben Smith in the twilight of his career as those knee injuries started to pile up. Todd Lowry, who, again, a bloke that did some great stuff and toiled really hard but was not a star. Then the bench, you had Kingston, Mateo, Nullival, and Tim Manor. And that was a young Tim Manor there. Up against that Melbourne team. And obviously with the benefit of hindsight and the cap cheating, you had rep stars like Slater, Turner, Chambers, Inglis, Dane Nielsen, Brett Finch. Remember, he jumped clubs.
Yeah.
Like, that was a big sticking point on Facebook this year, wasn't it? Recently.
Yep.
Cooper Cronk, Aiden Tolman, Cam Smith, Brett White, Adam Blair, Ryan Hoffman, Dallas Johnson. All these players were prime rep career as well. You had Hinchcliffe, Lima, Tandy, Anderson on the bench. So, yeah, like the supporting cast in that game was crazy. And that's probably the big knock on Reece Walsh. You can't blame Reece Walsh for having a better team. But you look at that Brisbane team that he had this year, and that was the criticism of Brisbane, wasn't it? Is that how can a team that good be nowhere near the premiership up until this year where Madge came in and given his reputation as a guy that can be the closer, a guy that can take a team that's close to the deal and then close that deal. He did exactly that. And he took a team that featured guys like Staggs and obviously Hunt and Reynolds as extremely experienced and talented halves, Payne Haas, Piakura, Ricky Carrigan, Mam, Willison, and they're obviously missing a few players there with injuries at the end. And how good was, I know it's tangential, but how nice was it seeing Reynolds calling up Walters onto the stage to lift the trophy at the end?
Yeah.
It was a great little bit of camaraderie there from the Broncos. But the two squads are incomparable in terms of peripheral talent. And I think that's probably the knock, is that Reece Walsh is in the same ballpark as prime Jared Hayne, although Hayne was bigger. And that I think that is an important factor, just Hayne being more of a raw athlete because of size does maybe...
Similar ages too?
Would have been, right? Because Hayne was young in 09. Jared Hayne was early 20s for sure, right? He's he's same. So is that that? Yeah, it would have been. Hayne was even younger, I think. Hayne would have been 21.
There you go. Yep.
So
yep.
And that, look, it's saying that Hayne was above Walsh is certainly no disrespect to what Walsh has done this year. He's been awesome. And it's going to be one of the all-time individual campaigns.
John, I think it's a really close call myself. I think Hayne is the most talented Eel that I've ever seen. And I'd like to say that, you know, from my own perspective, I've seen some talented Parramatta players over a lifetime of watching Parramatta. So probably, you know, 60 years of supporting Parramatta as a decision, not being like a kid under the age of 5, but, you know, making my mind up that I'm going to support Parramatta as a 60-year journey and probably 50 to 55 years of memories rather than, you know, when you're under 10, it's a bit harder to have memories of some of the things that make a player great when you're a kid. But Hayne is definitely the most talented player that I've ever seen pull on a blue and gold jersey. That doesn't equate to the best player.
No, exactly. Absolutely. There is an important distinction between the most talented and the best player. And because obviously it takes talent. I think it was Casey Stoner, the former Australian MotoGP star, who said that hard work beats talent until talent starts working hard. And there are some other Eels who are both talented and incredible hard workers that I think probably have Hayne covered as the best ever Eels. But from a pure talent perspective, Hayne is, I mean, among league and union, one of the most talented players I've ever seen.
Oh, he was able to do things and see opportunities that no one else seemed to be able to do. Now, I think one of the prime examples of that is that game where he had that touch finder right on half time and took the field goal attempt from the penalty tap, like 40 metres out near the sideline.
Yeah.
Kicks the field goal, and the Eels go on to win by 1 point. Like that field goal just before half time turned out to be the deciding points in the game. And he saw that moment.
One of only a handful of players, if the now unfortunately defunct Rugby League week, to win multiple 10 out of 10 scoring awards on a weekly basis. I think Peter Sterling was the other able to do it as well.
Yeah.
Rare Rugby League week, 10 out of 10. And he did it a couple of times and could have had a few more, honestly. But they were understandably quite stingy of handing out the 10 out of 10s. They didn't want to just give them out like candy, but had a number of those sort of performances that just made you take your breath away. And that 09 run, the stuff that he was doing, you go back and watch some of those highlight reels that are out there on YouTube, and it is some of the most fun football you'll ever see. Unfortunately, it came to an end in the grand final where Melbourne had a great game plan for him to try and minimise his impact. And on top of that, as we knew the year after, they were cheating the cap pretty badly. So, real unfortunate.
So, John, I would counter what you said about the Broncos having a better team around Walsh as the reason for selecting Hayne. I would also say Hayne didn't win the competition that year, whereas Walsh did. That would be my counter. However, I agree with you in terms of the players that were around them. Now, where to from here could be where Walsh separates himself from Hayne, because Hayne then continued on with an even weaker Eels team, because he was the fullback in a team that finished back-to-back wooden spoon and second last the year before they were the back-to-back wooden spooners. So 3 years at the very bottom of the table as the star player in the Eels team, it gives you an indication of the struggles that was there in terms of the talent depth. And this is despite the fact that towards those last couple of years of his career, that the Eels were arguably cheating the salary cap during that time as well. I know we were done in 2016, but I think from memory, the payments and all of that were dating back to the time when Hayne was there at the club. So, it's I guess Walsh has that chance to establish quite a strong career, maybe not in the same way that Hayne did. And then, of course, Hayne departed the club at a time when the Eels were going to get stronger. And look, mind you, he still was, would have been at a club where there was issues around the cap. So there was, you can imagine if we were still paying for Hayne in 2016, John, what sort of problems there would have been cap-wise then. So, and then what the issues would have been if we had have secured Israel Folau. Well, let's not talk about that. Those were some dark days, John.
Yeah.
Those were some dark days. But, look, I guess you're right. Jared Hayne, in the prime of his career, did not have the players around him that was going to lead to premiership success. And yet he still produced some freakish moments.
Yeah, I think it's pretty fair to say and I know it sounds a little bit self-serving to frame it this way, but the Eels did fail Jared Hayne insofar as getting talent, supporting talent around him. Now, he obviously contributed to that too with how much of the cap and whatnot that was taken, but they never built a team around him the way they should have. At least from my perspective, we did a very poor job optimising that, and which is why these sort of conversations are so frustrating, because how high was Jared's ceiling if he'd had the proper team and, a good core of coaching where we didn't just burn through coaches every other year we're going for a coach through that really dark run, I suppose, post Brian Smith in general, wasn't it? Like we sort of just went coach here, coach there, coach here, coach there. And it really poisons a lot of his conversation, because how good could have he been? How good would the Eels been if they'd been constructed properly in that window? There was a lot of talent. What would be good to know, John, and there's probably Broncos supporters can enlighten us on that. What sort of a trainer is Reece Walsh? Yeah. Is he a dedicated? Does he rip in at training? Yeah. That could be an area where he really separates himself from someone like Jared, who didn't have the strongest reputation for setting standards of training. Although he'd always find a way to be in good form in the season. Certainly wasn't a lead by example guy in the preseason. No. Like, having watched Jared at training, he knew the shortcuts without question. He knew them. But the thing you could never doubt was, and this is where you go, what might his ceiling have been if he wasn't as fit as he could have been? Because he was a physical specimen. He was fast. It wasn't like he'd get run down over 100 metres, like he'd be out of gas or anything like that. But you have to wonder, people used to criticise that he drifted in and out of games at times. And I think that was maybe a little bit unfair, because they're forgetting about the players that were around him, and it was expecting him to do everything. They got to a point in Jared's career where you look at the sort of numbers he was putting out, and the standard for a bad game for Jared was if he didn't have over 150 metres on the ground and multiple try involvements, it was considered a poor game. At least that's how it felt at times. But looking at chat, Kicks are saying, let's hope that history doesn't repeat with Moses. Obviously, we want to see the Eels go all the way with Mitch at the helm, but you're talking about roster construction. If you put a team like we have now around what Jared had, obviously you can't put the one-to-one team there, but relatively speaking, at the same team, I think we would have gone deep into finals with Hayne consistently. So that probably speaks to the good job we've done here under the end of Brad Arthur, and now obviously especially Jason Riles, to build this team back up. I don't think we're going to waste Mitchell's last years here. I think we have a real good chance to make a shake of it, which is hopefully how it plays out. Chris says, sort of in line with what you were saying, Craig, that Hayne was great, but I still reckon Fournette, obviously not Dick, but Ken, was our best fullback. And I think that was something you were alluding to, that Hayne, while being the most talented player, was not necessarily the greatest deal. And players like Fournette and Price, Kenny and Cronin will probably enshrine themselves above Jared and the Pantheon of Parramatta players. because they brought both talent and that hard work week in and week out.
Well, see, that was my caveat with the age, because Ken Thornett had his best years at the club when I was 5 years of age and under. So I don't have a recollection of Ken Thornett in his prime. I love seeing the old clips of Thornett. I more remember him when I was 10 years old, and he'd been retired for a couple of years, and then he came back out of retirement for the 1971 season. And what I remember that year was my father saying to me, "Look, this isn't prime Ken Thornett. He's a shadow of who he used to be." And yet the Eels qualified for the finals for the first time in a while when he returned. So I think their last time in the finals when they was 65. I think they made finals football 62, 63, 64, 65. And then they didn't make the finals from 66 through 70. And then Ken Thornett comes back in 71. They make the final for 1 year, and then he retires again. And then they quickly find their way back to the bottom of the table.
Mediocrity or sub-mediocrity. Yeah.
No,
I mean, everyone that you speak to that obviously watched the mayor go around, they speak almost in hushed tones about his impact on the Eels. So I'll always tip my hat to anyone that saw Ken Thornett in action and say that he was the greatest Eel. But even going into that, obviously the golden age Eels, we talked about Price and Cronin and Kenny and Sterlo. They had
Steve
both
Ella,
Zip Ella. I mean, individually and collectively, both for the Eels and at State of Origin level and for the Roos, they had so much success that while, again, Jared is the most individually talented Eel and perhaps rugby league player I've ever seen, you can't. It is very hard to install him over those sort of players who brought both premiership and individual success to the club.
It would have been interesting when you're talking about putting players from different eras into the same team. You spoke just then about like putting some of the current Eels in around Jared Hayne back in when Hayne was in his prime. I think, imagine being able to time travel Hayne in his prime to the Eels team that won the premierships in those eras. The Eels backline then was phenomenal. Now, there is an argument that maybe Peter Sterling was able to do the things that he did because Paul Taylor as fullback would come up and fill in the role of halfback defensively so that Peter Sterling didn't have to do as much defensive work. But I would still say if you had a colossus built like Jared Hayne,
that could
in the 1980s.
run the way Hayne did, and Hayne's ability. Obviously, Hayne's ability to pass both ways is predicated on the modern game and whatnot. But he was a natural playmaker that could rip a 30-meter cutout both ways and had a boot as big as anyone. Like there was nothing he could not do. And Reece Walsh is very similar in that regard, except that Hayne's bigger and probably faster. Faster over a distance, I think Walsh is better in terms of agility. Not that Hayne was lacking in agility and acceleration, but that's where Walsh really separates himself from other players. But yeah, it's a fun hypothetical, isn't it? Hayne, he really did not have great teams around him, except Michael's in chat saying the first 3 years, which would have been when he made his debut in 06, was it, when Taylor took over? That was those teams that culminated obviously in the 09 team that we talked about there. But prior to that, the 06, 07, and 08 teams were very good. They got knocked out by Melbourne in the finals every year. So everyone talks about 09 being the year we were robbed, but Melbourne did us in every year in the finals prior to that, which was really brutal because we had some great teams in 06 and 08, I think it was.
No,
06, 07?
Yeah, I think 07 we were a qualifying final, weren't we, against Melbourne down in Melbourne?
08, maybe we missed the finals. So we can pull this up.
Yeah, I think 08 we missed them. I'm pretty sure 07 we were in the finals down in Melbourne.
06 we made it into the first week of finals and lost to Melbourne 12-6 back at then Olympic Park. So that was in the old McIntyre system. That must have been 1v8, I think, or something similar. And then then in 07 was the one where we went deeper, you're right, and we went through to the grand final qualifier and lost 26-10 to Melbourne, in Melbourne. And, that was a four. Someone scored a double there because they haven't added up the scoreboard properly. I don't know what's going on there. What? 26-10 and then 14-10. So that must be the halftime score they've put up there. Weird.
Yeah.
The legacy scoreboards on NRL.com are a bit broken sometimes. It's a couple of heartbreakers there where Melbourne, in that same era of cheating, knocked the Eels out. And for the longest time, actually, up until 2017? I think the only team we'd lost to in the finals was Melbourne. And that's when we lost to the Cowboys in that elimination final after losing to Melbourne in the first week of the finals. So we hosted the Cowboys in the week 2 elimination final. And that was the first team that wasn't Melbourne to knock us out of the finals in like a decade. So when people say, why do I not like Melbourne? Why do I have Melbourne so highly rated in our modern rivalries? That's why. Because Melbourne have been the only team that have really done the Eels in when it comes to the big football.
Yep. Very much the case. Well, John, I think we've just about covered everything we need to cover for the news podcast. So our appreciation is, of course, extended to everyone who's still tuning into our podcast. Don't forget, we will keep the content coming your way. John, again, thanks for your continued flexibility to be able to give the go-ahead at the last minute because, of course, today was another day spent on the run for myself with hospital and a few other bits and pieces. So I didn't get to you till very late today to say, yes, look, let's go with the live as usual. So I really appreciate your continued flexibility with that. Again, thank you to everyone that's tuned in. Thank you to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, and of course the home of the Eels, Parramatta Leagues Club. Stick with us. The content will keep coming your way on TCT. And as I always say, go you mighty Eels.